Our final day in Boston, day 4 wrap-up, and we've got a lot to talk about. Your wrap-up starts now. This is Heart Rhythm TV. We are here on a last day. It is Sunday. I think Sunday is a special day. There's this feeling of, wow, that's another year. It's a great time to reflect. We had another late-breaking session here. Let's hit that science right out of the gates, and then we'll talk about where we are as a society and where we are with Heart Rhythm TV. Dr. Panico, what did you see today?
So we at the Late Breakers had a couple of anticoagulation trials, secondary analysis on both NOAA AF-NET 6 and Artesia. A couple highlights from each. Number one, in the NOAA trial, very interesting. What they were looking at in this analysis is in people who already had a history of stroke, was there a significant difference if they did or didn't have a history of EKG-based atrial fibrillation with device-detected AFib in the trial. And interestingly, both arms had a really low stroke at baseline, 1%, which was lower than expected. And what they found is obviously kind of echoed some of the earlier sentiments that we do see more bleeding if we anticoagulate. A lot of questions still to be answered, and certainly need a much larger trial, probably. I think, they were discussing about maybe 10,000 to power it enough to really get some answers we're looking for. On the other hand, secondary analysis of Artesia, which was also a simultaneous pub in JACC, they did a secondary analysis looking at could there be specific risk factor that we could use to really try to understand that data better. Because in the initial Artesia trial, we saw that there was, less strokes, but more bleeding. And I think we were all left with and then what next, right? And so what they used was a CHA2DS4 to determine and kind of parse this out a little bit. And what they found is in the higher than 4 group, clearly anticoagulation was beneficial, much more impactful reduction in strokes. In the less than 4 group, we probably shouldn't be anticoagulating these people for subclinical atrial fibrillation, on devices. And in that CHA2DS4 group, it probably warrants a little bit more conversation and really kind of a shared decision with the patients.
I think that's great because it's clinically informative. We've created the problem of atrial high rates because we have such sensitive monitoring and such longitudinal, which is a great thing. But then when it's clinically unclear what the action is, but I think this is great because it informs that there may even be epiphenomenon, right? That they're short duration, but these are patients at very high risk. So I think that's really useful with the no Artesia. Obviously, Rod Passman has React AF that's coming up as well, which will hopefully inform and there maybe even be a tiebreaker with intermittent anticoagulation. So I think that's great. Clint, what did you see today?
Yeah, I went to the same late-breaking session. It was packed with a lot of good ones. One that caught my eye, I think, was the trial showing the stylet-driven left bundle area pacing lead. Historically, we've all used the lumenless for, I guess, the most number of years, starting with his bundle pacing back in the day, and now more often with left bundle. It was a simple trial. It was non-randomized. It was multi-center, but prospective. And they found they were looking simply for safety, really, and feasibility. And it's you can effectively do it. High success rate at implant. It was like 97%, I believe. Complication rates were about the same as traditional devices. And, we have another tool now in the toolbox for left bundle area.
And I think Dr. Larry Chin has did a great job presenting that data. The one thing when you really dissect it down is the criteria for left conduction system capture is so varied.
Yep.
And the success rate, if you demand a left bundle potential, might be lower than 30, but then the overall implantation success. So I think, we had a big discussion last night at the conduction system dinner about what defines conduction system capture, and everyone has different definitions. Dr. Wong thinks he sees the left bundle potential in greater than 90%. And I would say that I think we're less than a third. Yeah. So there's so much work to do there. And like all things, the more you know you don't know. So there's a lot more there.
One interesting thing, too, that was brought up, we think, we kind of look at that area and how thick the septum is and how far we go in, and we think we're kind of immune to lead dislodgement, right? But his lead dislodgement reported rates in that study were about the same as what we get with traditional pacing systems. So there's probably some retraction that we're not completely appreciating at implant, but something to keep in mind. It's not foolproof.
Yeah, the question of whether it's the retractable helix or what parts of the lead design make it so that these leads that should technically be quite stable in the thick septum in fact may not be so. And a lot more work, I think, to be done to optimize lead design, whether stylet driven versus lumenless versus operator choice, right? If you've experimented with different leads, sometimes you kind of fall on one side versus another based on your own experience and how comfortable you are with each of these designs.
Dr. Dande, you were in that room with me. What really popped out at you in the late breaking session?
It was an excellent late breaking session. One of the studies that really caught my eye was the early CRT intervention in patients with moderately reduced EF. And we've asked this question as a community for a long time, right? Left bundle branch block and YHA1 to 2, because of course they have moderately reduced EF, yet not severely reduced EF. How does CRT impact those patients? And Dr. Cha did a phenomenal job of presenting those results from Mayo Clinic. They randomized patients to early CRT versus not, and it was a crossover design, which is one of my favorite study designs, because you really see what happens.
Deeply physiologic.
And they had CRT on in one half and then off in the other half and then on. And they really saw an impact on LV and systolic volume as well as EF. And in the group that had CRT on first and then off, the EF improvement actually kind of sustained even after they turned the CRT off. So that makes you wonder if that early intervention of CRT has a physiologic effect on halting the progression of heart failure, and that's really what we're seeing there. Of course, small study, but randomized, beautiful design, and I was quite blown away by the results, to be honest.
Yeah, and I think when you have a crossover, you don't need as many numbers because you're getting double the data there. But I really want to congratulate Mayo Clinic and Young May because that's an NIH-funded effort. We're seeing less and less funding going to a lot of it. So much drives industry, but this conduction system pacing movement was really driven by physicians, and it's harder and harder to get funding. But we've got PCORI with left versus left, and then this answering the ejection fraction of that 36 to 50 range, which has always been that gap, I think is going to be really impactful. I think that late breaking and final wrap up was great. Rachel Lampert also talked about long QT.
Yep, and the long QT question is again a very important one because we know that the overall incidence of cardiac arrhythmias in these patients is relatively low. However, what's the impact of age? What's the impact of sex? What's the impact of genotype? And what's the impact of having fully treated with beta blockers versus not? And of course, there's a difference in response to beta blockers with LQT1 versus 2. So really amazing results. The TLDR, the bottom line is that the overall events were quite low, even when they looked at the impact of each of these factors. And so it really comes down to your risk tolerance, shared decision making with patients, and overall as a field, I think we're moving more and more towards that, involving the patient in that decision making. And these results really reinforce that. So with your young athletes, young patients who are engaging in physical activity, you can really say, this is the category that you fall into, this is what I think your risk is. And then we can talk together as to whether you're tolerating that non-zero risk or if you'd really just rather have a zero risk of arrhythmias, which of course we can't promise in long QT. So it's really, really impressive results there as well.
And in other content this morning, there was the Founders Lecture Awards, and I really want to give a special thanks to Kugel Vijay Raman, because he really single-handedly was the renaissance man to bring this and revive conduction system pacing, get everyone so interested. And he gave a beautiful talk and involved all the people part of this movement, which really is physician-driven, and it galvanized industry to respond to the interests of normalizing the QRS, and it was really patient-centric. So fantastic there, Pugel, great job. And then Dr. Wei-Jin Wang, who created a technique. You know, it was on the shoulders of Mafi Rod, Vernoy, and Princeton, but he created a technique that swept the world. And you think about the ability to do something in your lab and then everywhere in the world is doing the same thing. That is really special.
Right.
So, and it's a beautiful thing, but so much more to learn. So it's a Sunday and the wrap up is done, but I mean, I've got my own sentiments here. Heart Rhythm TV was really created because we sat in a room and said, what's the mission of Heart Rhythm Society? And the goal is we need to engage our members more. We need to get them excited. We need to entertain them. We need to educate them. And now we've seen HRS move towards more advocacy as well, because we've always been an educational society. But now we've been so empowered with the business of EPS sessions, which is, and Dr. Panico is going to lead one of those in HRS TV. And we're going to have practice optimization, economics of EP, the business side of things. And unfortunately, medicine is a business. It's got to be sustainable, it's got to be viable, and we've got to be responsible for the healthcare system and give access to patients. So I'm really excited about how much we've shifted towards that, and hopefully we'll have better understandings of ASCs in July. But we've covered childcare, we've had a baby up here, we were covering puppies, we've done all the late breakers, and we've had so many great sessions. And most importantly, HRS is about being together. And that's what I absolutely love about this. This kind of feels sad that this is the last day, but we were all overscheduled, but had a blast. And I want to say congratulations to Jody Hurwitz, because her presidency has been a fantastic year and so inclusive of so many different ideas and so supportive of all the voices that you'll hear on the forums and all of the advocacy groups with EPAF, and now talking with Medicare and CMS with ACC. And congratulations to Ken Ellenbogen. We're so excited about the new energy and the expertise that Ken Ellenbogen brings. So we're looking forward to a great year. We've got HRX in between until we get to San Diego in 2025. So we are building to be better every single year. Thank you for being with us on Heart Rhythm TV. This has been fantastic. And we are out. That's a wrap. I love this Heart Rhythm team.